Hello, welcome to the session for information about the Bachelor of Public Affairs and Policy Management program at Arthur Kruger College at Carleton. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Lisa Mills. I'm the director of the program, and I am currently at home in Ottawa on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin people, and Carleton University, of course, is also located on this territory. So thank you very much again for being here today. Just a couple of housekeeping things. If you have any questions, if you could please put those in the chat. And I really do hope that you have questions and we'll be very happy to answer them. So I will be speaking, and then two of our current students will also be speaking. There will be time for question and answers both after I have spoken and after the students have spoken. But again, please put anything in the chat and we'll be most happy to answer any questions that you may have. Okay, so just to let you know about the very first slide I have here, the student who is posing here is Elise. She has just graduated from the program this year and immediately found a position with Canadian Border Services. So just to let you know who we are, so I'm Lisa Mills. I am the program director and I'm also an associate professor in the School of Public Policy and Administration at Carleton. Shannon Sullivan is the program administrator. She is awesome. As well as having the opportunity to speak to Shannon today, you can also contact her via bpapham@carleton.ca. Holly Klein-Swarmink is also someone you may have spoken to today, and you can also contact Holly. She is the college administrator, and Mary Francoli is the director of the college. So BPAPM, what is it? It's the only degree of its kind in Canada, and it's a multidisciplinary public policy degree. And so sometimes people are a bit confused as to what public policy actually is. And broadly speaking, it refers to decisions made by government. So things like the City of Ottawa's requirements to wear masks in enclosed public spaces, the provincial government's decision to reopen schools, government's decisions to cut greenhouse gases, the announcement Canada made at the COP26 summit in Glasgow last week. All of these things are examples of public policy. So why would you want a career in public policy? Well, I would say that apart from the fact that it offers the opportunities for interesting careers, COVID-19 has demonstrated just how important public policy is to our lives. So whether or not you get ill from COVID, whether or not your job is affected by COVID and how it is affected by COVID, what has happened in long-term care homes, what has happened with essential workers, what's going on with global warming, all of these things are affected by public policy. So working in both learning about public policy and working in public policy gives you the opportunity to be influential in these really important decisions about what happens to our lives and our societies and ultimately our planet. So in the BPAPM program, students learn about the processes and institutions of government in order to be able to influence decisions either through working in government, working in non-governmental organizations, working for think tanks, or as citizens. We hope that you will go on to a career in the public sector, but even if you don't, even if you want to do something else with your life, the kind of training and understanding of public policy you get from the PAPM program will be really important for you as a citizen and as a person for the rest of your life. So a brief overview of the program, and then I'll go into a little bit more detail. Students study a range of disciplines. So whereas if you were to do a political science degree, which is a perfectly great degree, but you would be mostly concentrating on that discipline. In PAPM, you get exposed to a range of disciplines and thus a range of ways of thinking about the world and of understanding policy. So these disciplines include political science, law, history, economics, public administration, Indigenous studies, social work. There's a range of disciplines which each have a slightly different perspective on approaching public policy and which give you a very well-rounded and full understanding of policy issues. So some of the people who have graduated from our program, this is to give you a bit of a concept or an idea of what you can do with a PAPM degree. One is Joe Cressy, who is a Toronto City Councillor and has been chair of the Toronto Board of Health throughout the COVID pandemic. So he has been really important in making decisions about the way that Toronto handles COVID. Fatima Ibrahim. Fatima did a BPAPM degree. She then did a Master's of Public Policy at the University of Toronto, and she recently got a job with the Public Policy Forum in Ottawa. Sarah Chuni is Program Management Officer at the International Development Research Centre. So Sarah is working on development issues, that is, issues affecting countries of the Global South or another way of thinking of those countries is countries that are somewhat poorer compared to countries in Europe, North America. Another Ottawa City Councillor, Matt Luloff. Garima Talwar Purkor is Director of Policy and Research for the Maytree Foundation. The Maytree Foundation is a non-governmental organization. It's a think tank that does policy research. And Garima is the Director of Research for that organization. And she looks a great deal at the impact of inequalities and health in Canada, in general, in Ontario, and in Toronto more specifically. And yet another of our graduates, Justine Villeneuve, who is Director of Communications in the Office of the Minister for Women and Gender Equality. So the kind of work that you can do with a PAPM degree, it ranges from working with government as a policy analyst. So a policy analyst is somebody who does research on policy, who investigates policy options and who makes recommendations to ministers. You could also work in management level in government. And you can do this for the federal government, or you could work for the provincial government or for municipal government. So we have people who work for the City of Toronto or the City of Ottawa as managers or policy advisors. We also have one of our graduates is actually the CEO of a firm, a private firm called Abacus Data, which does policy and polling and data analysis. You will often hear him on CBC radio in news segments talking about the results of polls. You could also work for non-governmental organizations. You could go to law school or graduate school. And we also have people who've gone on to PhDs in academic careers. So Deborah Thompson is a professor at McGill University. We have a Professor Jerry Sabin at Carleton University. We have Professor at Indiana University. So we also have people who work internationally who are working for the United Nations. So people go on to a whole range of careers here. So one of the advantages of the program is that it's in Ottawa, which is home to 3 levels of government. That means there's opportunities for working for parliamentarians. There's opportunities with the House of Commons or the Senate Page program. And it means that there's also a lot of opportunities for co-op and experiential learning. So just to say a little bit more about experiential learning, Co-op you can do from your second year, but in first year, there's already an opportunity to connect with policy organizations through a program we have called Kruger Policy Connects, which is when it was in person, you spent a half a day. Now it's online, and you learn about what that organization actually does, how they interact with public policy, how they influence it, and get there by giving you the opportunity to meet people actually working in policy and to learn a bit more about what is involved. Co-op provides you with opportunities to work for the government or a number of non-governmental organizations or private organizations. It normally takes place at the end of your second year and requires a B+ average or better, and it is paid, and people get excellent work experience and opportunities through the co-op program. The other opportunity for experiential learning is to study abroad, which you can do with grades of B or better, and you can spend 1 or 2 semesters studying in Asia, Africa, the Americas, or Europe. So just a little bit about Kruger Policy Connect. We've had a student, Adam Curry, who met the MP Romeo Saganash via Kruger Policy Connect and then worked with him on the private members bill to push the government to recognise the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which later became the basis for a government bill on implementing UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration. Alex Warontu is still working for actually Global Affairs Canada. He was working with the Myanmar department at the time of the coup in Myanmar, so he got to see and be involved with all the conversations and conferences that were happening during this period of time. And students do get to do really interesting co-ops with the government and with non-governmental organizations such as Water Aid Canada, the United Nations Association of Canada, and Oxfam Canada. So what does the BPAPM look like in your first year? The first year, students take a range of courses which offer either a perspective on public policy or a perspective on the context and institutions and background that inform public policy. So you do a course in an introduction to public policy, you do introductions to micro and macroeconomics, a course on Canadian political institutions, an Indigenous studies course, a political science course, a history course, and 1 credit of electives unless you need to do a language, unless you need to fulfill your language requirement. The other thing about PAPM, which we regard as a strength, is that it's a limited enrollment degree. What that means is that there's a small cohort of people. You're admitted with about roughly 100 students. And because it's a small program, students tend to have a pretty high entrance score. In 2019, it was an 89% admissions average. Last year, it was a 90% admissions average. The Ontario High School requirements are for 6 4 courses with an 83 to 86% average. There are no specific prerequisites, and obviously an Ontario secondary school diploma. If you have a diploma from another province or the equivalent from another country, we would also very much like to have you join us. There is a language requirement. All specializations require intermediate French. So in the Carleton system, that's French 1100. For the International Policy Studies specialization, you need French 1100 and another language also at the intermediate level or advanced French. So students get training in public policy, public administration more generally, but then from second year, you also have the opportunity to specialize. There are 4 areas of specialization. One is communication and policy studies, in which you have the opportunity to learn about the policy challenges of communication and information technologies, such as, what does it mean that Facebook has rebranded itself as Meta? What does it mean, that we know about Facebook's violation of privacy rights, and what it means for democracies, and the carrying out of elections and the spread of misinformation? Those are the kind of issues you would look at in this specialization. Development studies specialization is about looking mostly at countries of the global south and thinking about how do they relate to countries of the global north or the wealthier countries. What has that historical and current relationship mean for the possibilities for development and for becoming wealthier and more powerful in relation to the countries of the global north. International policy studies looks at relations among countries and the possibilities for war and for peace that arise from those relationships. And public policy and administration is more concerned with public policy in Canada. You have the opportunity in that specialization to consider environmental and sustainable energy policy or social policy. Each of these specializations has concentrations or streams or subspecializations that allow you to develop even further in an area that's of interest to you. You also have the opportunity to do a fourth-year honours research essay, where it's not mandatory, but you have the opportunity to work with a faculty member on an area of interest in research. Now, our student speakers may speak a little bit more about this, but probably I regard our students as our most important resource. We get really fantastic students who do all sorts of interesting things. The Public Affairs and Policy Management Student Society, so the PAPM Student Society, provides people with social events, the opportunity to connect with one another, social support, and also academic support. So they run an editing night for students in first year when their first essay is due. The PAPM Student Society is also really socially engaged. Here is a photo of them looking fantastic at Pride last year, I believe. Another thing that our students have done is created an online public policy magazine called Kruger Policy Review, which you can look up by, I have the URL at the bottom there, but this is an example of what PAPM students do. They create public policy online journals, which gives them the opportunity to write and to publish on public policy issues. If you are interested in grad school, the PAPM program has a kind of fast tracking program to grad school called Accelerated Pathways. So you may be able to do some graduate courses in your fourth year of PAPM, which you will then get credit for in your graduate degree in the Masters of Public Policy and Administration at Carleton, the Masters of Political Management, the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs, or the Institute, of European, Russian, and Eurasian Studies. So that is a very quick introduction to the program. Please feel free to put things in the chat if you have any questions, and please come join us in the booth after this presentation session, and we will be really happy to speak with you. You can also email us, bpapm@Carleton, if you have at carleton.ca if you have any questions. But thank you very much once again for joining us today. And now I am going to hand over to Eugene Jung, who is one of our fantastic students. And when I hand over, Eugene will tell us a little bit more about himself. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lisa. So as she mentioned, I'm Eugene. I'm one of the students in PAPM, and if you just give me a moment to share my screen, I can give you a little presentation as to my experiences with the program. So let me just. There we go. I believe that's working now. So, so welcome. Thank you for coming to the presentation. And so a little bit about me. As I said earlier, I'm Eugene. I come from a little small town in British Columbia called Lillooet. It's around 4 hours north of Vancouver. And I am in the my fourth year now of the Development Policy Studies with the concentration in Global Economic Relations. And so a little fun fact here about my favorite place in Ottawa, considering that I'm from British Columbia, it's that in the summers, I really love biking along the Ottawa River Bike Trail. But when it comes to the winter, you can't pass up a good time to skate on the Rideau Canal. So that's always really nice. So I guess the question now comes to, why Papham or why Carleton? And so one of the big reasons why I chose Carleton was the fact that Papham is a very small program. And so I have a lot of my classes with the same people who are in my specialization or my concentration. And there are also a few very general Papham classes that I can also get to know some of my other peers in other specializations as well. I also found that there was a lot of freedom in terms of policy focus. So despite the fact that I'm in global economic relations, my interests are really in sort of drug policy and health policy in Canada and internationally. And so I've had a lot of opportunities to kind of work in those fields and research in those fields. And it's also not necessarily limited to those areas. There are some classes where you can also learn about different aspects of development. So, for one of my classes, I learned about the illicit wildlife trade. For another one, I learned about the international law governing international trade. And there's just a wide variety of kind of policy focuses that you can kind of learn and get to know as you progress through the program. And the last reason here is kind of just the amazing co-op opportunities that are available. So I worked for 16 months at Health Canada with the Technology Biz Innovation team. And so we helped kind of structure Canada's border response whenever you have health products that enter through Canadian borders. Well, we're kind of in charge of the inspections and kind of the systems behind the inspections on those. But there are also opportunities with NGOs as well as the private sector that a lot of my friends and colleagues have taken up and have had amazing times with them. There's also a lot of clubs and societies that are offered at Carleton. So for instance, a lot of my friends are in the United Nations Society, which is kind of like similar to the Model United Nations that a lot of schools and tend to have. But there's also a lot of specialized clubs and societies. So for instance, this caucus here, this is the Carleton University Korean International Society. So I'm Korean, and so one of the ways that I get to connect with some of my fellow Koreans or other people who are interested in Korean culture, that's kind of one means through which we can talk to each other and kind of, just talk to each other about Korean culture, what it is to be Korean, and that's really nice. But there's also some opportunities with the Carleton University radio program, so you can definitely volunteer with that, which I did in my first year. And so one of my favorite classes, and so if you happen to enter the program, I would highly recommend you taking this course. It's Journalism 4504. It's Media International Development. And so the reason why I really like this one is that it kind of provides a very application-based focus to some policies. So we looked at development goals as it relates to journalism and international development relating to media systems. And so I actually got to interview some journalists from Burkina Faso about their experience with a certain media development project. So that was very interesting. And to talk about some of the things that I think I've learned just from, and that I would tell myself entering first year, is that I think one of the key things is that you don't really have to know exactly what you want to do at that given moment. And you shouldn't really be afraid to try new things. I mean, during my second year, I actually transferred. So I used to be in international policy studies, and then I moved to global economic relations just because I felt some of the courses might be a little bit more interesting to me and maybe would have a bit more relevance to some of my interests. But I mean, if you had asked me when I first entered university, I would have said, I'm sticking with this gun-ho. But you don't have to necessarily stick with what you want, and branching out and experiencing new things really helps you kind of get to know, who you are, what your interests are, and what you might want to pursue in the future. As well, Another thing that I think I've learned is that there's so many amazing resources that are on campus. So there's career services. If you have any problems with your resume or your cover letter that you want to have maybe looked over by professionals, you also have academic and co-op advisors, such as our wonderful Shannon. And so they can walk you through a lot of your degree requirements. With the co-op advisors, they can walk you through kind of your co-op progression, and they can certainly help you out with that. And one of the also nice things is that you can also work for them. So I actually got to work with the registrar's office at Carleton, and so with their work study program. And so that was really nice time because while you also get to understand kind of the administrative side of Carleton, they also are very flexible in terms of your hours and kind of work around your class schedules and your exams. And so I found that it was really nice, especially when you live on residence first year. It's just a nice, easy time, like a 10-minute walk in the tunnels, especially in the winter. And the last thing I think I would mention to myself is to not be afraid of talking to professors or really any campus service relating to any questions or anything that requires clarification. I still regret in first year not going up to a professor with one of the questions that I had that happened to actually come up on one of my exams later on. And so just these little things, I find that it's better to just go up and ask something and kind of get the clarification you need, as opposed to regretting it after the fact, such as with my exam. And if I could put a little fourth point there, I think the French was really important as well. I recently just got certified with the government for my C-level French, so they finally recognized me as bilingual, so that's always nice. And I guess just a little summary, a little wrap up, and talking about what's next. So I'm graduating this upcoming April, so that's really exciting. Woo! And I guess in the future, I'm applying right now to the Masters in Arts and the Juris Doctor program. It's a joint program between Carleton and U Ottawa that kind of deals with law and international affairs. And so I'm hoping to pursue that in the future. But even if I don't happen to get in, I'm still hoping to work more in kind of the drug and health policy in the future, and especially with its interactions with marginalized populations or crime. And so that was just a little quick summary of who I am, what's next for me, a little testimonial on my experience with PAPM. But I can certainly pass this off to another wonderful person with PAPM, Megan Burns, one of my colleagues. So I'll pass it on to you.
Amazing. Thanks, Eugene. So welcome, everybody. I'm so happy you're all interested in PAPM. It is an amazing program, and I'm so glad that I chose it. And so I'm here to tell you a little bit why I did choose it and a little bit about me and kind of my experience with the program. So here, I'll share the screen now. Perfect. Awesome. So a little bit about me. So my name is Megan. I use she, her pronouns, and I am from Ottawa. I actually worked as a tour guide here. So if you have any Ottawa tourism related questions, I'd be happy to answer those as well. My specialization is rights and human development. So in the same kind of stream as Eugene as well, under development policy. I've been quite involved during my time here at Carleton. I served as our president of our student society last year, as well as our VP communications in my second year. I'm also this year on the Carleton Senate as a senator, which has been really interesting. I've been involved in the Gender and Sexuality Resource Center. I'm in a play this year, which is really exciting, with Sock and Buskin, which is the Carleton Theater Company. And I am also currently on the varsity Nordic ski team, which is I'm really excited for the snow. One of my favorite classes that I've taken through my degree has been, there's so many, but one of them is Geography 3209, which was all about sustainability and the environment and the global south. And I learned a lot about food sovereignty, and that got my interest into food security issues. And one of my favorite places in Ottawa is probably the Conroy Pit Dog Park. But as I said, there's so many cool places in Ottawa. So if you're from out of town, it's a great city to explore. So I chose PAPM for a lot of the same reasons as Eugene. The biggest thing for me was community. I really love that it is such a small group of really dedicated and hardworking, passionate people. And you really find like a lot of people with similar kind of interests because everyone is so driven. And including in the community as well is our lovely administrator Shannon and director Elisa. They are invaluable resources, and because it's such a small program, it's really nice that you have that connection with them. I also loved the interdisciplinary nature of the program. I love learning about lots of different things. So having a variety of courses was really, really important to me. And then the reputation of it itself, PABM students are really impressive people, as you saw some of our alumni, and it's really cool to be part of that kind of legacy and have that kind of network that you can pull from as well. So I've learned lots of things in PAPM as well. Eugene had some really good advice, so please take that into consideration in your university experience, wherever you go. Some things I've learned as well. I've learned a lot about different perspective on world issues because you're looking at it, different things from the economic perspective, the historical perspective, political science, legal, lots of different ways of seeing similar things. You have a bigger vocabulary and way of connecting with people that are from different areas. So I really, really love that I am able to have those tools. The Kruger Policy Connect is a great program, and it showed me tangibly the many different ways you can work in policy. Policy is everywhere, it's in everything. So it was really nice to be able to learn that there are so many ways in which you can go to kind of find ways to help and learn about the things that you're interested in. And then I've really learned how to think critically and analyze a lot of different things. I think that's a big thing that education is teaching us. But in the PAPM program, it's really a core focus of kind of seeing these big concepts and really getting to the root of what is it that makes it tick. And if you're somebody that likes to kind of problem solve in that way, this is a really great program. And there's so many ways in which you can do that, and a lot of tools that they give you to do that too. So for me, some next steps is I'm also graduating in my fourth year this year, which is very exciting. I'm looking at maybe doing a Master of Community Planning. I'm not quite sure yet. There's lots of really interesting things out there. So I'm hoping to have something by the end of the spring, but we'll see. And I'm hoping to work kind of continuing in looking at development and more community-based. I think I came into my degree looking more globally, and I'm coming out of it wanting to look more locally. So I think that's another thing that's kind of changed throughout my time. But yeah, so that's a little bit about me. And if you have any questions about my experience or about just the student experience in general, and as I said, Ottawa things, I'd be happy to answer as well.
Thank you so much, Megan. Thank you very much, Eugene. It was really great to hear from both of you. I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit, maybe Eugene first and then Megan. We had a question about applying for co-op. So if you could talk a little bit about what the application process of applying for co-op is like. And then maybe a little bit more about what you found really beneficial or what you enjoyed about co-op. So yeah, maybe I'll start with Eugene, and then Megan, if you want to chime in, that would be great.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Lisa. So when it came to co-op, I actually applied when I first applied on the OUAC website just with the co-op option. And so when I got accepted, I kind of had all the co-op just programmed into my degree, I believe. So I don't know the actual process for anyone who wants to apply after the fact or once they already get in without the co-op option. But I guess to talk a little bit about my experience, I found it was very interesting and very kind of eye-opening because I feel like we learn a lot in the classroom about kind of the theoretical implications of a lot of, what public policy is, how the policy cycle operates. But when you actually see it in action, you see some of the kind of structural barriers that exist or some of the considerations that might cause the reality of a policy to kind of deviate from what we would expect. And so kind of understanding those interactions and understanding how, or like why we're seeing what we're seeing is happening and trying to find steps to alleviate those, I find is like a mini little policy cycle in and of itself. And so I really enjoy kind of connecting the classroom knowledge to kind of the practical implications of the work environment.
Great. Thank you, Eugene. Megan, did you want to add anything there?
Yeah. So I started doing co-op. I took the co-op course, which was a great course that really taught you how to improve your resume and cover letter and a lot of skills. So I'm really grateful I did that. I didn't continue with co-op, but I used FSWEP, so the Federal Student work employment program, and that's a great resource as well. And I got a job with Parks Canada through that program. So that's another resource if co-op's not for you, or if you're wanting to do something a bit different. FSWEP's a really great thing to have.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Megan. Yeah, co-op is an option for pursuing work experience during the PAPM degree, but FSWEP is another option as well that is also a really great opportunity for people. And, once you're a part of the program, you can certainly ask other students and ask us about that. So both of you mentioned kind of your favorite courses, or one of your favorite courses. Would you like to say a little bit more about what you liked about that course and any other courses that you found valuable in the program? And this time, Megan, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm someone that loves learning, and I love that there's so many different things that are within the policy sphere. So there's a lot of different ways to take that degree. I have some other interesting courses that are pretty cool. I took one about space law, and that was really interesting. I'm taking a lot right now that are focused on development and kind of what that means and those big questions. There's a lot of really interesting electives that I took. I took one, an Indigenous studies course. It was like decolonizing gender, sex, and sexuality. I took a religion course that was focused on Judaism. Took a Canadian history course in first year. I really, really enjoyed that. There's a lot of different things within that. The economics of development. I could just go on and on. There's a lot of different courses, and they all give you just like extra layers that you can add. And I've taken a lot of the content into my next courses as well. Like I've learned a lot of things and then brought them back as I'm continuing in my degree. So it really builds on itself too.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Megan. Eugene.
Yeah, I was going to mention the same thing about how all it kind of builds off on each other. I think another course that I really enjoyed was one of my geography courses that was an introduction to globalization. So you got to learn about how the waste economy works kind of worldwide, and how and what kind of the implications are for environmental sustainability and management. And that actually carried over to one of my classes on the international law on climate change, because you can kind of understand some of the kind of the nuances on why certain waste systems lead to this type of way, what the environmental implications are of the waste, and what's being done at the international level, and what the kind of discrepancies might be. And so it kind of provides another little perspective that really, I think, enhances the debate, and enhances the policy solutions and the policy implications of these types of areas. So I found that really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Eugene. Now, Megan was the president of what is now called the PAPM Student Society, what was then called Access. So, Megan, could you talk a little bit about the PAPM Student Society, what kind of things it does, and what sort of a resource it is for students in the PAPM program?
Yay, another great topic. Yeah, so the Student Society, we're there for the students. It's made up of all your students, classmates, and things like that. And there's a lot of social events. It really tries to be a place that kind of encourages the students to come for support. We have a lot of academic support. Yeah, we have different social events every year as well. We have our merch as well. And then we're also a space to come with concerns. There's been a lot of discussion with Lisa in the past few years about ways to make the program better, which has been really wonderful collaboration. And yeah, we do a lot of things, but it's really about a place to kind of make the program better. And it's a really great way to get involved and meet a lot of other students, and just kind of be able to have those connections one-on-one with other amazing people in this program. So I really enjoyed my time with the PAPM Student Society.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Megan. And Megan, Eugene had some advice for people going in for first year. Would you have any advice for students either going into first year, or advice for them throughout their degree? Any things that you think are good to do in order to make the degree experience better?
Yeah, great question. I took a gap year between high school and university. And so if there's anyone in this chat that is in grade 12 and kind of considering taking breaks, I think that's also a really great option. I deferred this program. So just as another thing to keep in mind, like you have time, like there's lots of different ways of doing things. And I found it really valuable to have a bit more life experience, and then came in and was able to really be excited about work as well. So take your time and take a deep breath. I think we're all, there's been a lot of kind of pressure, especially in high school, to kind of choose something right away. But this is your time. You're going to be an adult, and this is, or if you're already an adult, and this is kind of time for you to really understand what you like and use that time to make yourself a better person. So I think that I've found that a lot in this degree, which I'm really glad I took the time to figure out. And then I was able to have an amazing experience.
Thank you, Megan. Eugene, you are planning to go on to law/graduate school, which sounds like a really amazing program. Could you talk a little bit about how how the being in Papham kind of led you to that particular path? What was it about Papham that has made you interested in the particular graduate program that you're going to do?
Yeah, certainly. I think so. It all started with me actually doing the accelerated pathway program. So this may be a little bit of a humble time to mention that. So I took two course. I'm going to take a course in the winter semester, but currently in this semester I'm taking a graduate course called International Health Policy. And so when you learn that in that class, we're talking a lot about the response to COVID, and we're talking about a lot of the other health responses that the global community has had, especially at the WHO level. And so I think learning about that and learning about how the WHO creates norms and kind of creates policies to essentially, or they shape norms through public policy and through laws. I think that kind of inspired me to kind of look at the International Affairs program at Carleton. But because there's also the law aspect to that, I think the U Ottawa Common Law program was also very kind of enticing, just to kind of go for a very comprehensive understanding of global health laws and global health norms. And so I think that all of the kind of the foundational pieces in my Papham 1000, Papham 2000 classes that talks about, what is a policy, or what are some of the perspectives on public policy and on the philosophies behind a lot of these policies. That kind of culminates, and then now we have a bit more of a practical lens of, where can we apply these perspectives to? What perspectives are used by these actors when creating policies, or when being when being impacted by policies, and what can we do to kind of help them progress or help them develop in this case. And so I think that the kind of foundational building blocks led to the practical applications, and now I just want to pursue I want to pursue the same type of practicality, just at a more focused policy issue, which is kind of global health and drug policy internationally. So I think that that's kind of how Papham has kind of shaped who I am and what I want to do, especially now with the common law Carleton MA program.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic, Eugene. I'm going to ask Megan a little bit about her future path in a moment, but before I do that, in case we cut off at the 45-minute mark, I just want to remind anybody who's on the call now to please join us in the booth if you've got any questions after the presentation, and or to contact us at bpapham@carleton.ca, and we'll be very happy to answer your questions. So Megan, can you tell us a little bit about how you have taken sort of what's led to your potential future path?
Yeah, I guess my particular focus has been on development and what does that mean to be developed, and what is good development. And I think I've learned a lot about how there's a lot of issues on many, many different levels. And I really want to kind of learn more about the local level. And I was interested in a community planning degree as a way to kind of understand projects and what what are things in my own community that I can do to kind of improve at a large scale some like life for people in my own community, and then hopefully that maybe will transfer to other larger scale things. So yeah, so still figuring it out, but I think it's really nice that PAPM has given like a lot of the base of it and has given a lot of different perspectives that I can then use in like different directions to go in. So I really like that about it.
Thank you so much, Megan, and thank you very much, Eugene. Thank you to everybody who was in this session. We really appreciate your being here. And we will close up now. And if you have any questions, comments, anything you'd like us to answer, please go to one of the booths, which you can do by going to academics and then scrolling down the page to public affairs and policy management. It's not actually automatically in alphabetical order, so you might have to look for us a little bit, but you will find us. Or contacting us via bpapm, bpapm @carleton.ca. Thank you very much.